It is very warm. Let's talk about what a recce is. A recce involves checking out the locations that you want to shoot a film in for their suitability for shooting your film. Simple as that. Basically, you just go there, you take photos, and you note down anything that will affect the suitability of you shooting there. So what do you need to bring on a recce? This kind of varies depending on your role, to be honest. So I'll run through a list of what mostly cinematographers bring, but there might be a few in there for producers or directors and stuff like that too. Number one, everybody will need a way of taking notes, whether it be on a notepad, on your phone, on an iPad, whatever. Number two, it's a good idea to take a copy of the script with you as well, with any notes that you had made prior. If you're unsure about how to break down a script, I've actually got a video on that and I'll link that one above. Number three, you'll need a camera. Now, this doesn't necessarily have to be the one you're shooting on. You can actually just use your phone if you want to, but I like to bring along a DSLR or my mirrorless, which I'm using right now, and I like to take photos of the location in my recommended frame size. So I'll set the focal length to what I think I'll use on the day and see if that framing works in that location, especially if it's a really difficult location like a small space or things like a bar space, which might be a little bit difficult to navigate or negotiate, where you can actually put the camera and where you can't, and what will be in your field of view. Number four is a light meter. Now, it isn't 100% necessary to have one of these, but they do come in handy, especially on recce's if you're doing exteriors or if you're doing something that involves setting up in front of a window and you want to see how much light is coming through that window at that point in the day. You might want to use one. You can also use your DSLR as a light meter. Well, kind of. It does something similar. If you set your camera to shutter priority and then you set your shutter to what you need, which is double your frame rate, then if you depress the button, you should actually get a readout of what the f-stop is as a whole image. Depending on the points that your camera is focusing on, it'll work out roughly what that f-stop is. Now, obviously it's not as accurate as this because this also has a spot meter in it, which can very accurately pinpoint the f-stop of a particular spot instead of a whole area, but it is something if you're in a pinch and you just need to get a reading. Number five, if it has been written already, bring along the shot list and you can kind of roughly work out what you need to do in that space. Number six is a compass. Now, a compass isn't really necessary, an old school compass, but you can use an app on your phone just so you know the direction that your location is facing and therefore where the sun is going to be whenever you're filming there. There are actually apps out there that will also pinpoint where the sun will be at a particular time on a particular day, and if you're interested in those, I'll leave a link down below to one that I use. And number seven is the humble measuring tape. I use the metal one in this case because it's easier to just operate as a single person instead of having a cloth tape flying everywhere. So now that you've got all the stuff that you need, what do you actually take note of on a recce? First up, you take photos of every location from almost every angle you can think of, just to get a feel of the layout and exactly what you're working with there. I also tend to take photos that involve PowerPoints as well. So if I know that there's a PowerPoint in that corner of the room, I'll take a shot of that corner of the room with the PowerPoint in the bottom so I know, okay, so that's the corner where that PowerPoint is. Along with the PowerPoints, I also like to take note of where the switch box is or where the fuse box is so that my gaffer knows where to go and how to access it prior to the shoot. Along with those photos, I like to actually draw up kind of like a floor plan of what the area looks like. So I'll use the measuring tape to roughly measure each wall or each section, work out how big they are and draw it up roughly in my notebook to start. I'll also pinpoint on there where the PowerPoints are so that I know exactly where I have power access or where will be easiest to set up a light, and then I'll transfer those later and make it a little bit neater and more accurate. Those plans are also useful for camera blocking and your lighting plans later down the track. While you're there, you also take note of the equipment that you'll possibly need. So if any discussion comes up about what you might need, like a dolly or a jib or anything like that, make sure that it will fit in the space and then note down that you might need that piece of equipment later. To work out if camera angles are correct, I either use my digital camera, my A7R, or I use my phone with an app called Artemis. This allows me to preload a camera as well as select lenses onto the app, and it will give me a rough dimension of my field of view as well as access to my camera, so I can take a snapshot of that later, and it will also note down the bottom what lens I was using on what camera. This is really handy if you've got a really complex shot and you need to make sure that it is perfectly framed in that space. And if you do find out that there is a problem, you've got the time to fix that problem instead of rushing around on the day to try and solve that issue. Not really a cinematography thing, but more of a producer thing. You'll need to take note of where the bathrooms are. And if there aren't any bathrooms, how you're going to get your crew to the nearest bathroom. You'll also need to think about where is best to place catering, where is best to put any extra equipment, or have a charging station, or have a data station, or even things like where you're going to put crew and cast who aren't being used at that time. So a green room, where are they going to stay? You also need to take note of the sound in the space. So are there any trams or trains nearby? Is it next to a busy road? Are there air conditioners? Are there fridges that need to be turned off? You need to work out these things beforehand so you know how to combat them on the day. Here's an important one which often gets overlooked, unfortunately, and that is parking. Make sure you know where your crew is going to park safely, especially people like the gaffer or the camera assistant who will be taking a lot of gear and lugging that gear from their car to location. So make sure that they have a spot close by that they can easily load in and bump out. And like I mentioned earlier, determining which direction your location is facing. So if your location is a north facing location, or your camera is going to be facing north or south or east or west, it doesn't really matter. This will help you determine when and where you'll be shooting in your schedule. So if you have something that needs a very specific look, you can use one of those apps I was mentioning, like Sunseeker, which is linked below, or you can even use the direction that you're facing to determine what time of day you want to shoot. A little side note for this one is it's a good idea to schedule any interiors during the middle of the day, and then if you have any exteriors, try do them at the very beginning or the end of the day. The light just looks a little bit nicer when it's not harsh midday sun. Finally, I tend to take all these notes and I kind of organize them in a similar way that I would with my script breakdowns, and then rewrite them a little bit neater and organize them via scene or via location, and then have everything with me on the day so I know exactly what the rundown is for that particular location. And off the top of my head, that's about all I can really think of, but if you do have any more, leave them in the comments down below, because then we can all share the knowledge. I'm sure I've missed out on something. Film really is just about organization, and doing a recce is a really important part of that. So I do hope that you learned something today from this video, and if you did learn something and you enjoyed the video, please remember to give it a big fat thumbs up. And if you would like to see more of my face and learn a little bit more about filmmaking in the process, remember to subscribe, and I'll see you next Sunday.